The state considers tougher rules for when law enforcement can access the surveillance cameras that track us in the streets. Douglas County's leaders are moving ahead with their push to punish some crime victims, even after law enforcement distanced themselves from the idea. Denver switched busy one-way streets into two-way and didn't bother to tell Google Maps or Apple Maps. Hold on to your apps, everybody.
People are honking at each other, almost wrecking.
And a young Coloradan who's really into planes was gifted a copy of Southwest's training manual, and he found an error in it.
I discovered that 2 terrain monitors did not match.
We're not geniuses, but we report on them on Next. Law enforcement is trying to head off new rules for Colorado's surveillance cameras that track our cars. Every DA in the state is opposed to a bill at the Capitol right now that would require investigators to get a warrant to search those camera systems. Our Spencer Soisher just stepped out of a committee hearing at the Capitol. Spencer, this is a bill that has some bipartisan support. So is law enforcement trying to get this thing changed, or are they trying to kill it altogether?
Sure seems like kill it, but in the meantime, they've been able to get some amendments to this bill. In the meantime, like I said, and that would require that they up the amount of time that they're able to hold on to some of these plate images, the police departments. The crux of this bill is that it would require police departments to have a warrant to search a database like Flock has. And all 23 district attorneys, Republican and Democrat, opposed this thing. Members of the committee and the anti-mass surveillance crowd were mind blown at the unchecked ease and frequency with which officers run warrantless searches of Flock databases without even specifying why. We heard from the woman from the viral Porch Pirate story with Columbine Valley Police. She said her story shows searching these cameras should require a warrant after police there used Flock data to build their case, wrongly accusing her of stealing packages. Then the lawmakers continued to hear from police officers and district attorneys about how they solved a specific crime using the technology and how this bill would set back modern policing approximately 3.3 million years.
The effect of this bill would allow criminals to take advantage of modern technology to plan, perpetrate, and hide criminal activity while requiring law enforcement to work in the Stone Age, essentially.
He told me you can't get a breath of fresh air in or out of town without us knowing. He also told me that he's tracked me over the last month 20 times going in and out of that town. He had a summons already prepared for theft before he even spoke to me. I was faced with the dystopian task of proving my innocence against the apparent evidence from the system.
Ultimately, this bill doesn't say the name Flock in it, but testimony today was all about Flock, and at least for those in favor of it, there's a serious mistrust, Kyle, with how this private company is managing so many people's sensitive data here in Colorado.
Sure. Yeah, there's a trust issue, and if they hadn't misled you, then perhaps the public would have more trust in them. So obviously, Dems hold an edge on this committee as well as at the Capitol. How's the committee seem to be leaning on it?
It sure seems like this is going to advance out of committee, like I said earlier, with those changes, with that one amendment to allow them to hold on to data longer. Police departments say this is really going to hamstring them with some of their investigations, and that if they're not able to do things quicker, it could really ruin investigations if they have to go get a judicial warrant. But it sure seems like the committee members think, yeah, that makes sense that you need a warrant to do some of these searches.
All right, Spencer Soisher can slide back into that committee hearing. Thank you for your time. NBC News is reporting that the Trump Justice Department is dropping a failed attempt to prosecute Democratic Congressman Jason Crow of Colorado for reminding the military that they don't have to follow illegal orders. Crow and 5 other Democrats in Congress made a video last year reminding service members of the law. President Trump called it sedition, punishable by death. Federal prosecutors then tried and failed to get a grand jury to indict those Democrats. NBC News reported that not one of the grand jurors found that the government had cleared the low bar for an indictment. Crow said he would not be intimidated by attempts to weaponize the Justice Department against Trump's enemies. As President Trump retaliates against the state of Colorado for mail-in voting, which Trump falsely claims is rigged, Colorado is considering a change to protect elections from federal interference. Ballots are currently sent out 3 weeks before an election. State legislators may extend that to 4 weeks. Republican County Clerk Carly Koppas from Weld County supports the extra time in case there are issues with the Postal Service. Our Marshall Zellinger asked what happens if President Trump orders the Postal Service to stop delivering ballots.
Can you deliver mail-in ballots without the Postal Service? Is there a contingency that clerks are talking about?
That is actually a contingency that we are working on with the Secretary of State's office and the Governor's office.
Clerk Koppas told us Everything you can think of is on the table at this point to preserve mail voting, from ballots via FedEx or UPS, even a courier system. Coloradans, of course, can choose to vote in person if they want, but voting by mail is the overwhelming choice of Democrats and unaffiliated voters and Republicans. Douglas County's Republican commissioners are bringing back their controversial idea to punish some crime victims, to hold stores responsible if they don't report every shoplifter. The idea drew immediate criticism, and Douglas County's Republican sheriff and district attorney have since distanced themselves from the plan. The ordinance has now been tweaked. What was a $50 per day fine for businesses is now a fine of up to $1,000 total. Businesses have to make a good faith attempt to report every shoplifter, and they can do that with an online system. County commissioners say this is an effort to crack down on national chains ignoring shoplifting, but this ordinance would impact all 900 stores in unincorporated Dougco, including small businesses. Sheriff Darren Weekly and District Attorney George Brockler joined commissioners to unveil that plan in November. The backlash from the business community and even conservative commentators was swift. Both the sheriff and the DA then said they didn't support the plan. The commissioners are set to vote on the proposal tomorrow. Denver's leaders are considering putting a pause on plans for any new data centers in the city. Denver Mayor Mike Johnson says a moratorium will be filed through City Council to allow the city to review and strengthen regulations. Existing data centers and projects currently in the pipeline or under construction, like the data center in Denver's El Rio-Swansea neighborhood, will not be impacted, but they may be subject to new rules. The city wants to review regulations and zoning focused on how data centers use land and water and whether they'll drive up utility rates. The moratorium would need to be approved by City Council. You know that people will follow their Google map right off a cliff, so it would have been super if the city of Denver had notified those GPS mapping apps that it was changing the direction of some streets recently. We told you about the chaos that ensued, people driving into oncoming traffic with no idea the traffic pattern had changed. Now the city tells our Mark Salinger it's going to adjust how it rolls out these changes.
There are many reasons why the changes made to 13th and 14th Avenues off East Colfax are confusing drivers. Let's start with the GPS apps millions of people use. Denver's transportation department changed the direction of these two streets from one way to two ways, but didn't tell Apple Maps or Google Maps.
And I still think it's not updated.
Jonathan from the local tire shop off 14th is right. Finally today, after we asked a bunch of questions, the city told us they're reaching out to notify Apple and Google and working to create a process in the future to notify the apps when changes are made to streets.
And all of a sudden it's a change. So I've seen people already go on the opposite side of the street, coming back up, not knowing that it's a two-way.
Right again, Jonathan. But things are better than the original plan. The city put out these cones and painted new lines in the road after a bunch of close calls of cars driving head-on into each other. The original plan was to do away with all the lines in the road. Yes, remove all the paint. The city says that would make it feel more like a local street. Midway through the rollout, they realized that was a bad idea. Maybe it was after we interviewed Denver City Council member Chantel Lewis on Thursday while cars were driving the wrong way into oncoming traffic behind her.
Safety was the goal, and the way in which it was executed actually put folks in unsafe conditions.
Or maybe the confusion comes from the fact that people like Jonathan say they had no idea the streets they drive every day were changing direction.
I mean, we didn't even get a warning. Nothing that said, hey, this is going to be a two-way.
The city disputes that claim. They say they did put out signs, but clearly not everyone saw them. When voters passed the Vibrant Denver bond last year, they approved money for a safety study on 13th and 14th between Quebec and Colorado. That's a much longer stretch than the city first did these changes on. And they tell me that any further discussions to change those parts of the road, also to allow two-way traffic, would this time include a public outreach, Kyle.
I don't want to be critical of a job that I've never done. But if I was going to change the direction of a street, top on my list would be tell the people who live around there a bunch. Tell them until they say, yeah, I got it. And also tell the map companies. This seems like basic stuff.
And City Council says that as well, because I just got a letter from Chantel Lewis, who represents that district, asking for DOTI, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, to come in and talk to City Council members to explain exactly why this coordination was so wrong. And it says we want a clear explanation of where coordination and communication failed. Not great.
Not super, Mark. Thank you. Voters in Greeley are deciding whether to delay a huge development project up there that includes a hockey arena, a water park, thousands of housing units, and a hotel. Construction's already started on the Cascadia project on the western edge of Greeley off Highway 34. There's a special election tomorrow asking whether to repeal the already city-approved zoning, which would delay the project by about a year. The group Greeley Demands Better gathered enough signatures for voters to get a say on whether the development will be good for business or bad for the city.
It really is a David and Goliath story of us as community members saying, hey, we deserve a voice in how we grow as a community.
When we bring family from out of town, it's sad that I feel that sometimes we have to take them out of town.
If voters decide not to repeal the zoning rules and development continues, it's expected to be finished by 2028. You came through in a really big way for the Ember Center, which helps survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault in Douglas County. Between your one-time weekly donations and the monthly gifts to the Word of Thanks Fund still being tallied, you raised $50,000 to $60,000 to support their work. This week is the 299th week of your microgiving, which has raised $17 million for nonprofits across Colorado since 2020. So keep telling me about the nonprofits in our state that you support and the nonprofits that support your community. Email next@9news.com or text next anytime at 303-871-1491. Colorado's new Republican leader has the same problems as the last one. The party's again trying to oust a leader who refuses to resign. The Supreme Court is going to weigh in on Boulder's effort to stick oil and gas companies with the bill for climate disasters.
One thing I know about an airplane cockpit is that all the buttons and switches do a different thing.
No, that's a very accurate description of a cockpit. That kid knows so much about planes, he found an error in a major airline's training manual. That's next. Colorado Republican Party Chair Britta Horn's taken a page out of her predecessor's playbook, declaring efforts by her own party to oust her from the job to be illegal and illegitimate. Our partners at Colorado Politics were first to report on the weekend GOP meeting where about half of the state's party central committee met for a no-confidence vote on Party Chair Britta Horn. That resolution, which calls on her to resign, passed overwhelmingly. Her critics say she's divided the party. They don't like the substantial legal costs from her effort to kick former party chair Dave Williams out of leadership. It's been a rough go for Horn. She's worked with two vice chairs, both of whom have resigned, saying she's tough to work with. Horn says the vote to kick her out of office isn't legit because the party secretary lacked the authority to call the meeting. She says she'll let the party insiders vote again in a separate meeting on March 2nd. After 8 years of fighting, the Supreme Court will weigh in on Boulder's effort to force oil and gas companies to foot the bill for climate change disasters. The city and county of Boulder sued Suncor Energy and ExxonMobil in 2018, arguing that those companies misled the public about the dangers of climate change, said that they should cover damages attributed to climate-related disasters like fires and floods. They want to keep that lawsuit in state court, but attorneys for the companies argue that climate change-related harm should be regulated at the federal level. This is the third time the case has been appealed to the Supreme Court. High courts refused to take the case twice, but other local governments have piled on in recent years, seeking damages totaling billions of dollars. The court's expected to hear the case this fall, with a decision to come by early 2027. Meteorologist Chris Bianchi, I don't know if it would be possible to export snow from one area of the country to another, but it would seem that Rhode Island has our snow if they could just send it here.
And Kyle, Rhode Island's going to get more snow on Wednesday, on Friday, and then next Tuesday as well, while here in Colorado, we're in the 60s and 70s all week long. How about this as well? This morning, Providence, Rhode Island got 13 inches of snow in 5 hours. 13 inches is how much snow that Denver's had all winter since September the 1st. And they are up to 38 inches in Providence, Rhode Island. Absolutely, undoubtedly the biggest snowstorm they've ever had. And Boston, about 17 inches, New York, 15 inches, and Philadelphia, 14 inches, all more than Denver. And all we get here in Colorado, at least for now, the wind. The lousy wind, 80-mile-an-hour gust, high wind warning for us here in the foothills and in the mountains. That wind picks up tonight in the foothills and to tomorrow. In Denver, we don't see much of that wind tomorrow. We see it more on Wednesday, and then it dies down on Thursday. In the mountains, though, we will get some snow. Winter weather advisory for us here across the central and northern mountains. Winter storm warning for us in the Park Range, including Steamboat. And in Denver, well, yeah, we get this, 60s and 70s. So we're going to round out this winter season with 40 days, 40 days at or above 60 degrees. That is wild.
This 5-year-old was perusing an airline training manual, as one does at the age of 5, when he discovered an error. Hey, a reminder, you can catch Next streaming each night, 6 p.m. on 9 News Plus, and Next is a podcast. You can hear the show, but you cannot see it. You'll see pilots and airline personnel sharing their love of aviation with kids all the time. And at least once, a kid did them a solid by improving their training manual. Our Byron Reed caught up with that preschooler from Arvada.
You're on the tips of the wings.
Traveling by plane takes you on a journey.
Because they get you from place to place a lot faster than a car does.
For 5-year-old William Hines,
I love flying.
it's a mode of transportation that hits home.
I don't have to walk 7,000 miles.
William is a pre-kindergarten student at Campbell Early Learning Center with a passion for flight.
That shows them how many degrees the engine is.
He's very mechanically inclined, and so I suppose it was a natural progression to want to know about more fascinating things.
Amber Hines is William's mom. She says his passion took off thanks to a connection with the Southwest Airlines pilot who brought William a company training manual.
And sat with him for 2 hours going over the charts and just talking shop with him.
But William noticed something was a little off.
I discovered that 2 terrain monitors did not match. They did not match at all. That is closer up and that's farther up.
I had no idea that one of our friends had started a job with Southwest Airlines, but she said, "Can I pass these along to my manager?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, that's fine."
That's when the CEO of the airlines found out, then invited William and his family to Dallas for a VIP tour.
So we went down to headquarters. It was amazing. Everyone there was very, very welcoming, and we definitely had the tour of a lifetime.
I got to go in a simulator, and the simulator pilot was Chris, showing how close.
It's an experience this family will always remember.
That heats up the cockpit.
Because of William's attention to detail that might land him in a career he already loves.
Then I can support people to a place.
For Next,
Like 140 people.
I'm Byron Reed.
I could listen to him say simulator all day long. Here comes Marilyn simulating the plane with feedback. We'll get it next. Feedback on the potential for the federal government to interfere with mail delivery of ballots. Sue says, please stop saying that the majority of voters like mailing their ballots. Sue says voters receive the ballot by mail, but Sue says only 5% actually mail them back. The vast majority use drop boxes. You know, we got another question on that, Sue. We're going to look into that. I don't recall ever seeing a breakdown on what percentage of Colorado voters mail the ballot back or put it in the drop box. You make a really good point there. We'll get an answer. We'll see you next time.